Good morning. Hope you're having a great week. It is Monday, February 16th, 8:54 a.m. Central Standard Time, local time here in Oklahoma City. I'm at home if you can't tell. And let's try to get right into this and start looking at the load board. There's a ton of stuff to talk about. While I'm talking, let's show some loads. So let me try to hurry up and get to that. A few disclaimers really quick. Number one, I am not a Landstar employee. I own a trucking company. It's a very small company. It's just me. I'm an owner operator, and I partner with Landstar. So I'm not a Landstar employee. I don't have access to any kind of internal confidential information with Landstar for the purpose of, SEC. They're a publicly traded company, those types of things. So let's go over to the truck count. Let's refresh. 7402. So this is the number of active trucks at Landstar. This is a number that I like to monitor. It's not the number of trucks leased to Landstar. This is the number of active trucks. There are inactive trucks. So the number of trucks leased to Landstar is higher than this. I have no idea how much higher it is. There could be 50 million trucks leased to Landstar, and they're almost all inactive. I doubt that's the case. I think that this number is fairly close to the total trucks leased to Landstar. If I had to guess, I would say there's probably at any given time 1 to 200 trucks inactive. So the total number of leased trucks is probably a couple of hundred, maybe even 500 trucks more than the active trucks. So whenever I first leased onto Landstar, there were over 13,000 trucks. And this was in like the summer of 2021 during the freight boom. There were over 13,000 trucks leased to Landstar. Now, their fleet size is basically shrunk in half. I don't know what they peaked out at. They probably got upwards of 15,000 trucks leased on. I wasn't really paying attention to this number a lot back then. I started paying attention to it when the fleet size started shrinking. And there were times when it shrunk rapidly, like 3 months, 1,000 trucks gone. Next 3 months, another 1,000 trucks gone. So over like 6 months, 2,000 trucks disappeared off Landstar's fleet. But it seems to have stabilized around 7,400 on the active truck count. So, and the freight market seems to have stabilized a little bit. It seems to have bounced back a little bit. I still think it's not a great freight market, but it's not like still going down in a horrible freight market. So now let's go over to the load board and total number of loads. This is a surprising number. We're up at 79,428. 79,906. We're getting really close to 80,000. This number surprised me on Friday. On Friday, this number was almost 90,000. That gets us back to what the numbers used to be back in the good old days. So let me do a search real quick and we'll talk about all this stuff. I'll give you something to look at while we're talking. Let's just look at like the best loads on Landstar's load board. Let's do minimum revenue $5,000. Minimum rate per mile 250. 936 loads. And let's also, let me pause a second. I need to spit. All right, sorry about that. Let's also do a max weight so we get rid of all of the overweight loads. So we're at 936 right now. Let's do 45,000 pounds. And now we're down at 883. Do I want to restrict by trailer type? Because we are probably going to get, yeah, let's just do van loads because we're probably going to get some underweight, oversized loads on this. Yeah, that just flipping it over to van got rid of a ton of loads. And let's do specialized, needing power only. That got one load. And let's do containers. That got one load. Oh, and this is on direct shipper all. Let's do direct shipper, yes. We're down to 195 loads. I don't want to look at spot market loads. Those are fictitious loads. It's pointless to skim through those. All right. Is this sorting by revenue? Did they finally fix that? Let me see. No, it's not. It's still sorting by agency. All of the Landstar agents have three-letter abbreviations, and for some reason they have the load board set to sort by the agency code. So agencies that are like AAA show up at the top of the list. So let me sort it by revenue. Uh-oh. Just a second. Did I did I accidentally click into a load or something? All right. Now it's sorted by revenue. Oh, you know what? I did not restrict teams, so we're going to see some team loads on. You know what? Let me get rid of team. I don't want to look at any like specialized stuff, and like there are people out there that are solo dry van and they're looking at these loads. They're like, I'm going to Landstar because they got these, loads paying $8 a mile, and that's some expedite team load. You're not getting that crap. So I don't like to show specialized loads that pay well above market unless like I'm specifically showing those loads. It'll set false expectations. So let's do team no and see. We go from 195 to 98. Like half the loads just disappeared by getting rid of the team loads. All right, now let's search. Yeah, those $10,000 loads were team loads. They just disappeared. Now let's sort by revenue again. There we go. Now we'll scroll through this while I talk about what's going on. Okay, so the total load count, 90,000 loads on Landstar's load board. And I'm just going to scroll through this really slow. You can pause it and look at it if you want to. Let me, without context, that's a meaningless number. So let me explain the context. Whenever I first leased onto Landstar, it was at the beginning of the freight boom, the early part of the freight boom. And the average number of loads we were seeing on a normal day was like 85,000 loads. And on a really busy day, we would break 90,000. We would get up like 95,000. And then slowly over time, it started getting to the point where like 100,000 loads was normal. And on a really amazing day, we were getting up to, I think the highest I ever saw was like 120,000 loads on Landstar's load board. And then the freight market started tanking abruptly. Why? That would take me a long time to explain. A lot of people do not understand why we had such an amazing freight boom. It's not rocket science. Whenever the government gives money away, people spend it. So why did we have a freight boom that lasted approximately 2 years? Why was it that for approximately a 2-year period, it was really hard to find like basic electronics like TVs and PlayStations and Xboxes and stuff like that? Why was it hard to find cheap used cars? Why did all that stuff happen for approximately a 2-year period? Turn your brain on for a second and think about it. I mean, you still have people that are confused as to what happened during the freight boom. They have no idea why we had that freight boom. What was the government doing during that freight boom? What did they do to stimulate the economy? They did a lot of things, but the biggest things that they did was welfare, unemployment. I can't remember the exact details of what they did with unemployment, but approximately what they did with unemployment, they made several changes to unemployment. One was they extended unemployment to where you could sit on unemployment for up to, I think, 2 years. Wow, that sounds like a number that is correlating with something. So they increased the time you could be on unemployment for like up to like 2 years. And they increased the amount of money that you got on unemployment. I can't remember the exact details, but I think it was whatever your normal unemployment was, you got an extra $600 per week on top of that. So I have no idea what normal unemployment pay is. The last time I looked into unemployment was like 20 years ago. And the maximum unemployment paid in the state of Nevada, where I lived at the time, was like $350 a week. And I qualified for maximum unemployment at that time. I didn't get it. I didn't actually get approved for it. And I ended up getting a job before I went through the appeal process. I've never been on unemployment, but I have filed for it once and it got denied, which is normal. The employers always fight it. And I did not appeal it because I got a job while I was, in the process of trying to get unemployment. But so I suspect that the max unemployment hasn't increased by very much. So back then it was $350 a week was max. And if you're making a minimum wage, you're probably not going to get the max unemployment. So people were getting whatever their normal unemployment was plus $600. So imagine you're getting $150 a week in unemployment. And you're getting an extra $600 a week on top of that. You had people on unemployment that were making 2 or 3 or 4 times more on unemployment than they were when they were working. They had zero incentive to go back to work. They would make less money if they went back to work. So they just rode out unemployment for the full 2 years. That is also the reason why, if you remember during that period, there was this huge shortage of workers. Like fast food restaurants, all these really low paying places were begging for people. They couldn't find people to work for them. And that filtered into other jobs that were decent paying jobs. Like we had a shortage across the entire workforce for a couple of years. And nobody could figure out, like this was this grand mystery of nobody could figure out, why is this happening? Oh my goodness. I think some people just don't have fully functional brains. So you had all these people just sitting on unemployment, riding out the full 2 years, making like 3, 4, 5 times more money than they're used to making. And they don't have any credit. They don't have any income. So they can't go out and buy a car, a new car. So for them to get a car, what are they doing? They're buying used cars. And they're going to buy here, pay here places because they don't have any credit. That's the reason you couldn't find a cheap used car. And what else are they spending their money on? TVs, gaming consoles, computers, things like that. That's the reason all that stuff was sold out. That's the reason we had like crap loads of stuff coming in from China, like tons and tons of cheap electronics. What happened when that 2-year period abruptly ended? That unemployment, that 2 years of unemployment, the freight market crashed abruptly at the end of that 2 years. And there was a huge change in the unemployment situation, or the lack of being able to find employees. All of a sudden, it became hard for these people to find a job. I remember doing a load to Harbor Freight. I think that's the name of the business. Yeah, it was Harbor Freight in Dallas. And it was a new store that had just opened up within a month or two of me doing the delivery. And I was talking with the guys that were, the store manager and then two of the unloader people. Those were the three people that were unloading the trailer. And I was talking with them about the new store opening up and all that stuff. And and they were talking they were all like so excited to be working there. And I was like, aren't jobs like easy to get? And they said, no, it used to be, but it's not anymore. Um, all of them told me that it was really hard to find a job now. And the two loader guys had just, the store manager had been working at Harbor Freight. He transferred from another store, so he wasn't a new hire. But the two loader guys, they were new hires to Harbor Freight. And they told me that they had applied at hundreds of places and they couldn't even get an interview anywhere. Like McDonald's, like they were applying everywhere they could. And they weren't even getting interviews. Like all these places are just getting just flooded with applications. It's hard to get an interview is what they told me. They they were hired on at Harbor Freight for like $14 an hour or something like that, which is not very good money like these days. Like you can get a job at McDonald's paying like $15 to $20 an hour. So $15 at Harbor Freight is not very good money. And they were so happy to have that job because it was so hard for them to get a job. Like no one would even interview them for a job. So that's the type of I'm trying to explain the dramatic change. The freight market went from all-time high to like really bad freight market within a couple of months. And finding a job went from businesses begging people to work. You know, McDonald's was like, we'll hire you same day. And, you know, you can start today making $18-20 an hour. Like businesses were begging people to work for them. It went from that to, you know, the crap freight market, and you can't get an interview even at places like McDonald's within like a couple of months. And it was because of the unemployment benefits running out. Like that was the dramatic shift that happened. And people can't figure out like how all, like what caused all of that. It's still a mystery to some people apparently. All right, we are down at the bottom of that list. Let's do another search and keep talking. So let's edit the search and let's look at team loads. So now we're going to do team yes. 95 loads. And we'll scroll through those. Let me remember to sort by revenue. All right. So I explain all of that to explain this. When we had that abrupt drop in the freight market that happened within like a 6-month period, there was a really big decline in the freight market. When that happened, we also had some other major situation happen. Shortly after the freight market started tanking, Russia invaded Ukraine. And when the United States and their allies put sanctions on Russia and Ukraine and everyone else they thought they needed to, the total number of loads on Landstar's load board plummeted. It went from like 90,000. Okay, so at the all-time highs, we were hitting like 120,000 loads. And then when the freight market started tanking, we started dropping back down to 100, 95, 90, 85. And then when they put sanctions up, Landstar's load board went from like 85, 90,000 loads down to like 45, 50,000 loads. Abruptly. Why? Why was there such a massive drop? Because a large number of Landstar agents were Eastern Europeans. And they all had sanctions put on them. So Landstar lost a large number of agents when those sanctions were put up. So for the last 2 or 3 years, I think it's been around 3 or 4 years at this point, 2, 3, 4 years, however long it's been that we've been in this bad freight market. Landstar's load board at the beginning of the bad freight market, the total load count dropped down to like 45, 50,000 because of the sanctions. And we've been slowly climbing total number of loads ever since then. And we're getting back up to the point where we have like 90,000 loads on the load board again. And I've seen an abrupt increase in the number of loads here recently within just the last few weeks. Used to hitting 75, 80,000 was really high. And now all of a sudden we're getting like up to 90,000 loads in a day. All right, we're through all those. Let's do another search. Let's do flatbeds. Let me get rid of the team flag. We're just going to do regular flatbed. Only 18 loads. My goodness. Low boy does not add a single load. There's almost no flatbed loads on Landstar's load board. Do I have any? Oh, okay. Never mind. I have the minimum revenue set at 5,000. That's the reason. Let's take minimum revenue down to 1,000 and minimum rate per mile at 250. Now, this is basically profitable loads. Anything that's paying less than $1,000, you only get about 70% of whatever the load's paying. And on a really short load, you're going to get almost no fuel surcharge. So you're getting closer to that 65% mark. So on a short load that's paying $1,000, you're only making like $650. You really need to make over $500 a day to be profitable as a truck. So $250 a mile, you only get about 70% of that, which is about $1.75 a mile. Everything you see on Landstar's load board, that is the total amount the load pays. You get about 70% of whatever you're seeing on here. You're not getting, like, this is what the customer's paying. You're not getting that. Landstar's getting a piece of that. The agent's getting a piece of that, and you're getting a piece of that. You got 3 people sharing that. So $250 a mile, I would love to run at $250 a mile, but a load that only pays $250 a mile, I'm only making about $1.75 on that load, a mile, and that's not very good. So $250 a mile and $1,000 minimum revenue, when you're talking about full rate, those are about break-even prices. Like if you're running, like, I would not be happy running loads at these prices. This is like my threshold, my cutoff. I don't want to run loads at these prices. So this is like bare minimum. So we'll do that. We'll put those as our minimums and we'll search for flatbed loads. All right, now what was I saying about the load counts? Let me remember to sort this. It looks like it's kind of sorting by revenue. I think what it is the multis. Whenever there are multiple agencies that have a load, the multis show up at the top, and then it goes alphabetical after that. It's just, I don't know why. I've commented on them and asked them to like change that. Signal Hill, California to Signal Hill, California. 43,500 pounds of auto parts. It's 4,500 miles. Where do they have you going? Let's look and see where this load is going. It's janky load board. Round trip to Canton, Michigan. Multiple loads a week. Possible dedicated for 45 days. So you've got a month and a half, 2-month dedicated run just going back and forth between Signal Hill, California and Canton, Michigan as many times as you can for a month or two. The rate per mile is not very good, but it's steady work. It's not horrible. So it's basically LA to Detroit. LA to Detroit flatbed load, Max weight load, just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for a month, month and a half. 4,500 miles. That's a lot of miles. So you're not going to be, so 70% of 12 grand. Let's do the math on that. I could go find out what the exact numbers are. Actually, no, I can't. They didn't break out the accessorial pay. The accessorials is listed as no right here. Good agents will put the accessorial pay in, but on this new load board, it doesn't show you what it is. It'll just say, yes, there is accessorial pay. The agent did fill this out, but we're not going to show it to you. I have provided feedback on that years ago, and they still haven't added that in. So you still can't see the accessorial pay. You have to go to the old load board to see what that pay is. But let's do 12,000 times 0.7, $8,400. So $8,400 is approximately what you would make on this load. It's 4,500 miles. And those are probably not actual miles. It's probably more miles than that. So how many miles can you do in a week? Well, if you're a really hard runner, you can do about 3,600 miles a week, depending on a lot of factors. On a max weight load, where you're not going to have the best mile per hour average, and let's say that you're not, going 80 miles an hour. Let's say you're going a reasonable speed. You're not going faster than 65, which if you're hauling a max weight load, you should not be going faster than 65. Let's say 3,500 miles a week. That's a reasonable average if you're a hard runner, hauling a max weight load. So what percentage is that? Let's do, it's roughly 76%. Is that right? Okay, let's do 45, 10. Oh, no, I did 4,600. 4,600 times 0.76 is 3,496. Yeah, so it's about 76%. So we got $8,400 times 76%. So that would be about $6,384 gross to the truck per week if you're averaging 3,500 miles per week. Yeah, about $6,384 gross to the truck per week. That's really solid. If you're out there, let's say, there's 52 weeks in a year. A lot of truck drivers take little or no time off. So let's say that you're doing that for owner operators tend to take more time off than company drivers. Company drivers might only take like 2 weeks off for an entire year. But let's say a company driver is going to take a lot more time off than that. So instead of 52 weeks, let's say a company or an owner operator runs 40 weeks out of the year. They take 12 weeks off per year. So 6,384 times 40, that would be $255,360 a year, which is a fairly normal total gross revenue for an owner operator that runs hard. Like, I don't run hard. I take a lot of time off. I don't make anywhere close to that. But for owner operators out there running their asses off, 255,000 gross per year, that's a fairly normal year. Even prime incorporated drivers make like 250 grand a year. The owner operators there. The big difference in owner operators is not necessarily the revenue. It's not difficult to make 250,000 a year as an owner operator. The difference is expenses. So you can have Landstar owner operators out there making 250,000 a year, and maybe they're clearing $120,000 a year after expenses. If you go and you look at prime incorporated drivers and look at their pay breakdowns, you'll see that a lot of them are making 250,000 gross per year, but after all expenses, they're making like 70,000. So expenses are huge as an owner operator truck driver. Like the revenue is not hard to get, but the expenses are extremely high. As trucking, as an owner operator truck driver, the expenses are really high. Managing expenses is where your like income comes from, your business net. That's like managing expenses is really important as an owner operator. If you don't manage expenses, then you can make $300,000 a year and only clear 40 grand after, you only have $40,000 profit after all expenses if you're bad at managing your expenses. So anyway, let's scroll through these loads. I forgot what I was talking about on the total amount of loads on the load board. I forgot exactly where I was at talking about that. But yeah, we're starting to hit upwards of like 90,000 loads on the load board. The freight market seems to be picking up. And whenever you talk about the freight market, you're talking about a lot of things. It's very complex. One of the things that I have projected, one of the assumptions or predictions, whatever you want to call it, that I made a few months ago was that, Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada to Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma, government load, $3.90 a mile. Again, everything you see on here is the full rate. You only get about 70% of whatever you're seeing. I hate government loads. It's just a lot of extra crap you have to go through, and they usually don't pay extra. But this one looks like it is actually paying a little bit extra. But it's been sitting on the load board for 2 days, and anything that sits on the load board for more than an hour or two is usually not a very good load. So there's something with that load. Maybe Nellis Air Force Base is out in the middle of nowhere in Nevada. Who knows what all kinds of crap there is. You have to jump, what kind of hoops you have to jump through for that load. But yeah, some predictions that I made a few months ago was with the crackdown. This is actually more than a couple of months ago that I've been making these predictions. This is several months that I've been making these predictions. Our federal government is cracking down on illegal immigrants. Not only are they cracking down on illegal immigrants, the illegal immigrant problem has gotten so ridiculously bad. Our country is overrun with illegal immigrants. It has gotten so bad that it's affecting legal immigrants. Our government has been cutting back on work visas for people to come into this country. So the number of legal immigrants has decreased because of the illegal immigrant issue. So our government is reducing the number of legal immigrants, and they're going out and finding the illegal immigrants and deporting them. And they are going to all these states like California that are giving CDLs to people who can't speak English, who can't read or write in English, which is a requirement for having a CDL. They are going to these states and threatening them to get them to start obeying the law, telling them to stop giving CDLs to illegals, stop giving work visas to illegals. The federal government's cracking down on these radical left states that are just not obeying the law. So that's reducing the number of truck drivers that we have. We still have a lot of illegals that are just driving trucks without licenses. Like, that's a huge problem. We have illegals that are driving trucks without licenses. We have illegals that are properly licensed, but the states are giving them CDLs illegally, but they are legally licensed, but the state was not supposed to give them that license. And then we have people who are here legally that have work visa, foreign workers that are doing everything that they're supposed to be doing, and they're completely legal. And the numbers of all of those are reducing. And this is something I've explained in previous videos, but I'll explain it again. because context is important. You can throw out information without understanding that information. It's pointless information. The federal government is cracking down on all this stuff, and that is reducing the number of trucks on the road. What determines the freight rates? Supply and demand. The number of loads versus the number of trucks looking for loads. So if we get rid of a bunch of trucks, what's going to happen? It's going to change the supply and demand. The rates are going to go up. Brokers are going to get desperate to move loads. Right now, the reason rates have been so suppressed for the last few years, like we had the freight boom because of government welfare, the redistribution of wealth. But whenever that ended, we should have just gone back to a normal freight market, but we didn't. Our freight market tanked way below normal. Why? Because we had too many trucks. There was a massive migration into the United States of foreign labor, and a lot of them became truck drivers because that's one of the easiest work visas to get. And that's one of the easiest jobs for foreign workers to get. Good paying jobs, that is. So we had, and it wasn't just foreign workers. Every company in the industry started over hiring during the freight boom. Standards went down. You heard, okay, so LTL jobs, like Saya, what are XPO Logistics? What are some other companies? YRC, which no longer exists, Yellow Roadway Company, LTL companies like that reduced their standards. Lots of companies reduced their standards. Landstar reduced their standards during the freight boom. Almost every trucking company reduced their hiring standards through the freight boom. You heard about people that they got an over-the-road job. They were out over the road with some crappy starter company, Swift, CR England, whoever, and they quit after a month, and then they applied in an LTL company, and they got hired on at Saya or someplace like that, which that's unheard of. Like, that's how low the hiring standards got. Companies were desperate to just get anybody they could. They were just looking for warm bodies. So it wasn't just a problem of foreign labor. Companies were over hiring anybody that they could. So the fleet size expanded, and then whenever we had that abrupt drop in freight volume, we had way too many trucks, and it caused a huge drop in freight rates. Now, a lot of companies have shrunk their fleets back down to normal size, and we've had a lot of companies just go completely out of business, like YRC. Normally, this is a normal cycle. We have boom bust cycles in the freight market. We are having an abnormal bust cycle right now. Normally, bust cycles only last 1 to 2 years. We're in like year 3 or 4. I'm not sure what year exactly we're in. We're well past the 1 or 2 years. Like a normal bust cycle is usually only like 1 year. Sometimes they'll go into 2 years. But we are in an abnormally long cycle. Why is it abnormally long? Well, we've had a reduction in the normal trucking workforce, but we haven't had a reduction in the foreign labor in the workforce in trucking. Because they're working at such low rates, like they're being paid so little, they're able to be profitable off of these really low rates, and they keep driving the rates lower and lower. The freight market should have come back up by now. It should have come back up a year or 2 ago, but it didn't because of the foreign workers that we have. They are keeping the trucker side of the equation, the amount of trucks, inflated. I keep skimming through here. So now what we're seeing is a crackdown on that foreign workforce that is suppressing the freight rates. How big is that workforce? Now, I don't know. I've done a lot of digging online to try to figure that out, and the information doesn't exist. So I have to speculate. So let me explain that speculation. If you go search online to find out how many over the road, well, how many truck drivers there are, what it comes back with is it tells you that there's about 3.5 million truck drivers in the United States. That's the general number that you'll come up with whenever you search online. About 3.5 million truck drivers. And then if you try to find out how many over-the-road truck drivers there are, it generally tells you around 2 to 2.2 million over-the-road truck drivers. Now, I know that number's wrong. That is not accurate. How do I know that number's wrong? Well, because I'm not a moron, number one, and I have a basic understanding of the industry. The majority of truck drivers are line haul and local drivers. The majority of truck drivers. If you don't believe me, who are all the biggest trucking companies? All of the LTL companies are the biggest trucking companies. Now, yes, the LTL companies have started creating over-the-road fleets. UPS used to not have an over-the-road fleet. They created one. A lot of the LTLs have created over-the-road fleets over the last 20 years, but they're tiny. They're little bitty tiny over-the-road fleets. The majority of their company is still line haul and local. If you go and you look at the largest trucking companies in the United States, I haven't checked recently, but Landstar is considered to be one of the largest over-the-road trucking companies. And it's listed as having around 10,000 trucks. That's one of the largest. I think that Swift is the largest over-the-road company because Swift is basically a conglomeration of several of the biggest over-the-road companies. Swift bought out Knight, US Express, and I can't remember what all other companies they acquired. Merit or something like that. Anyway, Swift has acquired a whole bunch of trucking companies over the years, and I'm pretty sure they are the largest over-the-road company by a significant margin. If I had to guess, I would say Swift has a fleet size of about 40,000 trucks. Let me look it up so I'm not just throwing out random numbers. Let me pause this. All right, this is directly from Knight Swift's website. We are now the industry's largest full truckload company. A TL, truckload. TL's truckload. LTL is less than a truckload, LTL. So they claim on their website that they are the largest truckload company, which is something we also refer to as over the road. So they are the largest truckload or over-the-road trucking company. Their claim, not mine. And they have 19,000 tractors, according to their website. 19,000 tractors at Knight Swift. That's the largest over-the-road trucking company. And last time I checked, UPS was the largest LTL. How big do you think UPS is? Last time I checked, they were at like 109,000 trucks. 5 times bigger than the largest over-the-road company. The LTL companies are a lot bigger than the over-the-road companies. Let me just double check UPS real quick. All right, this is according to the Safer. It says that UPS has 117,153 power units. FedEx actually has a larger fleet size. I did not know that. FedEx is at like 130,000. But I am not sure if this includes like some of their delivery trucks. I'm not sure if their little cargo van things that they deliver door to door with. I'm not sure if that's like part of this. I don't think it could be because just those little delivery vans, they have hundreds of thousands of those things. There's like this number is way too low if it's including their little delivery trucks that they deliver door to door in. So 117,000 commercial motor vehicles registered for UPS. 117,000. 130,000 to FedEx. That gives you an idea of how big the gap is between the LTLs and the over-the-road companies. The majority of trucks are LTL trucks by significant margins. Well over half of the trucks are local and line haul. So let's go back to the search here. Did we finish this? All right, let me finish scrolling through this and then we'll do another search. So 3.5 million total trucks. And if you search online for how many over-the-road trucks there are, the number that you consistently get back is between 2 and 2.2 million, which is wrong. That is not accurate. Why does it come back with that number, though? Well, my guess as to why it comes back with that number is that it is counting line haul drivers as over-the-road drivers. Why? Because data analysts are not truck drivers. They don't understand the context of the data. And if you don't understand the context of the data, then you're going to come to inaccurate conclusions. What they're looking at, I'm pretty sure what they're looking at to determine the difference between, over the road and everybody else is what type of logging are they using? So I forget the exact ranges, but I think if you operate within 150 miles of your domicile, you're a local driver and you can just log hourly. You don't have to use a logbook. You can just log your hours hourly. You can work a maximum of like 12 hours a day, 60 hours a week. But if you go outside that 150 miles more than like twice a month, I forget all the exact rules, then you're not a local driver and you have to log on a logbook. I think that the data analysts are considering everyone that's using a logbook as being an over-the-road driver, and that's not the case. A large amount of the LTL drivers are line haul drivers, and they drive, a lot of them, outside 150 miles. And they also choose to use logbooks so that they can do 70-hour work weeks instead of 60-hour work weeks. So I think it's just counting everyone that's logging on a logbook as an over-the-road driver. So I would guess, based off of what I know, that the number of over-the-road truck drivers are somewhere between 1 and 1.5 million. So let's say it's 1.3 million over-the-road truck drivers. Where are all of the foreign workers? Are the foreign workers working at UPS? Are there illegal immigrants working at UPS and FedEx and Saia? No. No. The foreign workers, whether they be legal or illegal, are almost exclusively in the over-the-road category. They are competing with over-the-road or trucking companies. So they're not competing against 3.5 million truck drivers. They're competing against my estimate of 1.3 million truck drivers. So what percentage of foreign workers are that 1.3 million? All right, well, there's no information out there for that. Like, you can't find, that information doesn't exist. So let's speculate. Let's guess. Well, the radical left media has been perpetuating propaganda because people have realized like how many foreign workers there are in trucking, and they've started complaining about it. So the radical left media has started a new talking point, part of their spin, their propaganda, claiming that there are only 1,000 H-2B visas being issued for trucking per year. So there's only 1,000 foreign workers coming in on, now this is the critical part, H-2B visas into trucking. So that's the spin that the radical left is trying to use to minimalize people's concern about the number of foreign workers suppressing freight rates. So is that true? I don't know. That could be true. Maybe there are only 1,000 H-2B visas being issued for foreign workers to come and become truck drivers, but that's not the total number of visas. That's the type of spin that these propaganda machines put on information to misrepresent the information. The total amount of work visas, including visas other than H-2B, there are other visa types that they could come in on. The total number of work visas that I found online, according to government websites, the government has been issuing for years 65,000 work visas per year for the trucking industry. So there have been 65,000 foreign workers coming into the industry per year. And there was a year or two where they doubled that number to 130,000. Just think about, I'm sorry, I just want to go off on a tirade and yell and scream and curse right now, and I'm going to hold myself back. Just think about how absolutely insane that is. You are bringing in, at 130,000 foreign workers, if my estimate is correct that there's around 1.3 million over-the-road truck drivers, 130,000 is how much? 10% of the workforce. Do you think that's going to have an effect on working conditions, on salaries, on freight rates? Yes. 10% of the workforce? That is insane. That's going to suppress rates. It's going to decrease work conditions. It's going to put the leverage completely on the side of the trucking companies as far as labor goes. It's going to put the leverage completely on the side of the shippers on freight rates. It throws the supply-demand ratio out of whack. That's just 10%. Those are the legal foreign workers in the trucking industry, the ones that they know about. 130,000 work visas issued per year. 10% of the workforce for over-the-road truck drivers. That does not include all of the illegal immigrants. How big is that number? Nobody knows. There have been busts that they've done, and I'll give you an example of one they did in Oklahoma a month or two back. I'm not sure exactly how long ago. Within the last few months. They set up a little random check on I-40 in western Oklahoma. I think it was in western Oklahoma. And they were just pulling over random trucks and checking to make sure that they were legal. Like they were checking to see if they were here illegally. And I think it was approximately a week that they were out there doing random checks, and they caught around 100 illegal immigrants driving trucks. That is an insane number for random checks on I-40, which is like I-40 in eastern Oklahoma or western Oklahoma. It's not like a really, really busy interstate. I don't know how many trucks they were pulling in per day, but let's say that they were pulling in, 100 trucks per day. That's a lot. 100 trucks per day is a lot. So over the course of 5 days, 500 trucks, and 100 of them were illegals. That's 20%. Now, these are completely made up numbers. I don't know the exact numbers. They didn't post the number of trucks that they checked. But that's like 20%. So, by my speculative calculation, So if 10% of the workforce is legal foreign workers and then 20% of the workforce is illegal, that means approximately 30% of over the road truck drivers are foreign workers. So that is a massive amount of the workforce. If my numbers are even close to accurate, what is going to happen when the federal government starts getting rid of all of those illegal foreign workers and they start getting rid of the legal foreign workers? They start canceling their work visas. They're not giving out new work visas. They're not renewing work visas, which is what they're doing right now. They're not giving work visas for trucking. And they're getting rid of the illegal foreign workers. And a lot of these illegal foreign workers, a lot of these illegal truck drivers, they are afraid to go into certain states. Like they're afraid to leave these radical left states like California for fear of getting deported. So it's even though they haven't removed many of them, the fear of being deported is causing a lot of them to just self-deport or stop leaving certain states or just stop driving truck in general. Just the fear of it. But imagine what would happen to the freight rates if 30% of the trucks disappeared off the road. That would be amazing for freight rates. The rates would go up dramatically. We would go into another boom market in the freight market. Like it would go from, we wouldn't go to a normal market. If we lost 30% of the trucks, we would go from crap market to all-time high within a short amount of time. So that's what I've been projecting for the last, 6 months or so. Basically, since around the time that that illegal truck driver that was licensed in California, he couldn't speak English. California gave him a CDL. He shouldn't have had a CDL, but he was legally licensed in California. Did a U-turn in Florida, I think it was, and killed like a family of 4 doing a U-turn on the interstate or a highway or something. And then after the accident, he fled back to California. U.S. Marshals and ended up going to California and catching him. But that was one of many major like national news headlines of illegal people driving trucks, killing people out on the interstate. And that was like the breaking point. That one, right after that is when they ended the work visas for trucking. And that's when I started making the speculation that the freight rates could come up dramatically because the federal government is finally going to start cracking down on all of these foreign workers in trucking because they've killed so many people. They've caused so many issues that it's gotten the attention. It's gotten worldwide attention. That's how bad it's gotten. And now they're going to start cracking down on like not just the illegals, but also the legals. All of the foreign workers. And if my estimates are correct, that approximately, and I think 30% is a low estimate. Now, some of you may be sitting there, like the LTL drivers, they may be sitting there thinking, no way, there's no way that there's 30% of the truck drivers are foreign workers. But the over-the-road truck drivers that are hanging out at the truck stops, 30% seems like a low number. If you walk down the fuel island, anywhere I've been across the country, it doesn't matter if it's Portland or Oklahoma City or Dallas, Omaha, Nebraska, it doesn't matter where I'm at, Atlanta, Georgia, no, it doesn't matter where I'm at. When I go into a truck stop, walk down the fuel island, walk around in the truck stop, it seems like every truck driver I encounter is speaking a foreign language. So 30% seems pretty low to over the road truck drivers that have experienced what I've experienced. Now, if you're one of these sheltered LTL drivers that doesn't spend a lot of time at the truck stop, you don't live at a truck stop like we do, maybe 30% seems high to you. But I think 30% could be a low estimate. But if my estimate of 30% is correct, if we get rid of 30% of the truck drivers, oh my goodness, that is going to be absolutely huge. Freight rates, oh, we could see a dramatic increase in freight rates. But anyway, this is something I could talk about all day long. Let's move on to other things. Over the last week, I've been working on my bookkeeping, preparing for taxes. For those of you who don't know, I do my own bookkeeping. I file my own taxes. I do pretty much all of the business side of the stuff I do myself for two reasons. One is to save money because people charge ridiculous amounts of money to do really easy stuff. I think it's absolutely insane that people charge like $700 to $1,000 to file taxes for me for a small business. My taxes are not complicated. And to charge that kind of money is insane. And then bookkeeping costs is just absurdly high. So that's number one reason that I do it is cost. Well, actually, cost is the number two reason. The number one, the main reason I do it myself is because of incompetence. I have paid other people to do my bookkeeping and file my taxes for me, and it's cost me a lot of money because they didn't do the bookkeeping properly and they didn't do the taxes properly. So that's the main reason I do it myself, is to make sure it gets done correctly. To give you an example of doing the bookkeeping incorrectly, one of the years, I had the same company doing my bookkeeping and filing my taxes for me. And there was an entire quarter of bookkeeping that they did not do. I sent all of the receipts to them, but they did not do the bookkeeping on an entire quarter. And whenever they filed my taxes, it just didn't come out right. I ended up paying in like $9,000 in taxes. I was like, there's no way that I should have owed $9,000 in taxes. It was like 9 or 10 grand. I just did like a rough calculation in my head, and I was like, I should have paid like $4,000 in taxes. So I went back and I did my own bookkeeping for the entire year, and I found out that they missed an entire quarter of bookkeeping. And then I went back and I did all the calculations on the taxes, and I found out that not only did I lose out like all the write-offs for an entire quarter of write-offs cost me extra in taxes, but also the way they filed my taxes, they filed a bunch of my write-offs against my personal income tax, not my business side. So you have two different sections of taxes that you're filing. You're filing business taxes, and then you're filing personal taxes. Now, I file it all under my personal taxes, but they're in like separate sections. I don't know how to describe that. But so think of it like this. You have all of your business revenue and your business expenses. And then after you do all of that, it comes out to like your personal income. And then on your personal income, you have personal write-offs. Well, what this dumbass supposed man, she was arrogant. I'm about to get so mad. I'm going to have issues. Like my throat's going to dry out. I'm about to get so mad. I almost she and I got into an argument about I saw her doing things incorrect when she was filing my taxes, and she argued with me. And she was one of those, she had that super trucker attitude. I've been doing this for 4,000 years and I know everything. You know, she had one of those attitudes, just really old, cranky woman. And, I should have just stopped right there, but I had already prepaid for her to file my taxes and do my bookkeeping for the whole year. So I just let her finish. What she did was she put a bunch of my business expenses over on my personal side. So let me try to explain the basics of taxes. So you get a personal everybody gets the standard deduction. So on your personal taxes, you can itemize taxes. But if your itemization doesn't go above the standard deduction, then you just take the standard deduction. So she put a bunch of my business expenses over in my personal, and it wasn't above my standard deduction. So I just ended up taking the standard deduction. So all of these expenses that she moved over to my personal, they were just thrown aside, tossed away. So there were tons of write-offs, that the entire quarter of write-offs that they missed, and then all of the write-offs that they put under my personal instead of the business, that were not counted. So it ended up costing me, like, I should have paid around $4,000 in taxes, and I ended up paying over $9,000 in taxes that year. That really pissed me off. So yeah, that's I do my own bookkeeping and my own taxes because of incompetence. I don't trust people. I've never had anyone do my bookkeeping or taxes correctly. And cost is the other reason. It's just too expensive. Like it's just not worth it. Bookkeeping and tax filing for a small owner operator like me, it's not much different than filing personal taxes. It's very similar. It's not that big of a deal. Once you, like, for some people, it's a lot to take in. It's like, oh my goodness, that's just too overwhelming. I'll pay somebody else to do it. But if you take the time to figure it out, you'll realize it's really simplistic. My bookkeeping is way more complicated than it needs to be. I track everything. I track way more than I should. I have spreadsheets on everything. I don't need to track that much stuff. I choose to track that much stuff. The bookkeeping is actually really simple. Basically, you just need to keep track of your fuel costs, all the money you spend on fuel, all the money you spend on maintenance and repairs. That's it. Just total amount of money that you spent on all that stuff, and you put that into your taxes. That's basically all there is. That's bookkeeping and tax filing for a small owner operator like me. Now, if you have a fleet of like a dozen trucks or something, yeah, it's going to get quite a bit more complicated than that. And if you have employees and all kinds of stuff, but just like an owner operator like me, it's about the same as filing your personal income tax. All right, we made it to the end. Was that flatbeds? Yes, we were looking at all the flatbeds. So now let's do van loads. And let's do, 3,500 van loads that are profitable. So let's increase that 250 a mile to 275 a mile. Still quite a few loads that are profitable. All right, we're still looking at no teams. It's still direct shipper. I guess we'll just slowly scroll. I don't know if I'm going to make it through this whole list, but we'll just look at this list. I'm sorting it, my revenue right now. There we go. And we'll just slowly go through this list while I talk. So anyway, I was doing my taxes and bookkeeping over the last week, and I found out that I didn't get paid for a load. Well, let me rephrase that. I did get paid, and then they took the money back. They charged back a load on me. Let me check my email. I'm actually going to be making a phone call. I might pause the video and make the phone call, and then come back and tell you the outcome. So luckily, it was one of the lowest. It was the lowest, I think the lowest paying load that I did all year long, charged back on me. So it was that recovery, the repower load, the SOS load. The Landstar driver that while he was taking a shower in, I think it was Blackwell, Oklahoma. It's north central Oklahoma off I-35, close to the Kansas border. I think it was a Flying J truck stop. While he was taking a shower, the driver next to him pulled out of the spot and forgot they had a trailer or something and just took their trailer across the guy's truck and just ruined his truck. And I had to come out there and repower that load. And they paid $1,000 total. It was $850 line haul, $150 fuel surcharge. My cut on that load came to $702.50. $700. Not the only reason I took it was to get a trailer. I needed a trailer. I think I delivered it to Omaha, Nebraska. And the agent was a pain in the ass to work with. I actually told him after I booked the load and he called me and acted like a jackass on the phone, I told him to find somebody else to do the load. And then he called me back like 10 minutes later begging me to stay on the load. So it was a whole bunch of drama for this really cheap crap load that I was just taking to get a trailer. And then it was just, the whole load was just tons and tons of drama. It was cheap freight. I was dealing, whenever you're hauling cheap freight, you're operating under the cheap freight business model. High expectations, low pay. So like they were acting like they were paying me $1 million for this load. They wanted constant check-ins with everything. They wanted me to contact them when I picked the trailer up, whenever I got to the shipper, whenever I got unloaded. They wanted constant checkups. They wanted me to send, pictures of the freight bill and like just a whole list of crap they wanted me to do for this cheap load. And they talked to me like I was some step kid that they hated. So yeah, it was a really frustrating load. And what happened was like my very next settlement, I had a line item of getting paid $702.50 for the load. And then right underneath that was a chargeback of $702.50. So they paid me and took the pay away all in the same settlement. So I didn't get paid anything for the load on my very next settlement. So then like a week or two later, I got another settlement where I was actually paid the $702.50. And then like 2 months later, they charged back the load and they took away $702.50 out of my settlement. So I originally delivered the load in late October, around October 22nd. And that final chargeback happened on December 23rd. And I didn't know that it happened until I was doing my bookkeeping. Yesterday, on Sunday, is when I found it. So I sent an email to the agent on Sunday, and they replied back on Sunday, and they said they had no idea why it was charged back. They said contact Landstar. So then I forwarded that email to Repower and Landstar Contractor Services Settlement Department. And the Repower department replied back and said that they had checked with their supervisor and reviewed it, and they have no idea why it would be charged back. They said that it shouldn't have been charged back. They said to contact Contractor Services Settlement Department, which I had already sent an email to. And that is the only place that I haven't heard back from. The agent, the Repower department that helped the agent repower that load, both of them has said that they don't know why it was charged back. So I've got to get in touch with the settlement department. And Landstar has some policy where it's like 90 days. Outside of 90 days, you can't dispute payment. And we're getting really close to that 90-day period. So I emailed them, and they could take 2 or 3 or 4 days to respond back to the email. So I don't want to drag this out through email. So I'm going to call them. Let me just pause this right here, and I'm going to call them. All right, so just got off the phone with Landstar. Let me see how long. It's now it's 10:35 a.m. And that was a 22-minute phone call. So what was the outcome? Nothing. The person seemed confused. She took a really long time Like I explained to her what was going on, and then I just sat there for like 20 minutes while she like reviewed stuff. And then after like 20 minutes, she came back. Actually, it wasn't that long. I sat on hold for 8 minutes to talk to her. I was on the call for a total of 22 minutes. So that was 14 minutes that I was on the call with her. I took about 2 minutes explaining what was going on. And then the final minute of the call was her telling me to call back later. So 11 minutes that I sat there approximately of her trying to figure out what was going on. And she just came back and told me that she's forwarded over to the billing department. And she told me to call back around 1 p.m. to see what the outcome is. The outcome is that I'm getting paid for this load. Like my contract with Landstar is that I get paid. I don't like, even if a customer refuses to pay for a load, I still get paid for the load. That's one of the reasons I leased to Landstar instead of getting my own authority, so I don't have to deal with collections. Another thing she asked me, she asked me if I was the original driver or like the second driver. I'm not sure what that would have to do with it, but I think maybe she was going to try to make some excuse that the second driver forgot to like turn in the bill of lading. I think she was going to make some shit up to just get me off the phone because she didn't seem to know what in the hell she was doing. And I hate interacting with people that don't know what they're doing because they'll just find any excuse they can just to move on, get you off the phone. So supposedly she forwarded it over to the billing department, but that could have been some completely made up crap just to get me off the phone because she didn't know what to do. But I'll call back at 1, and I'm going to be really pissed off if I call back at 1 and they're like, I don't know what in the hell you're talking about forwarding to the billing department. And then somebody else starts the whole process all over again. But we'll see. We'll see. All right, we'll keep scrolling through this. But so I'm a little pissed off that they charged back the money. But I'm also like, oh, that's $700 I wasn't expecting. That's $700 more in my pocket that I didn't know I had. And the 90-day rule that Landstar has, I would fight them on that because they do not hold themselves to that standard. If you followed the channel, you know that I had a load charged back on me 2 years after I delivered it. And it was an expensive load. It was like my cut of the load was like $5,500. So just out of the blue, I get a call from Landstar and they're like, hey, I was sitting at home at the time and they're like, hey, when are you planning on, hauling some more loads? And I'm like, I don't know, whenever the hell I feel like it. What concern is it of yours? And they're like, well, your account's really negative right now. So either you need to start hauling some loads and making some money, or you need to like pay us to get your account paid off. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like my account's like what, like a $1,000 negative? Like it's constantly $1,500 negative. And they're like, no, it's like $7,000 negative. It's like, what? And I was like, no, that's not right. And I went and I started digging and I found that like I had a negative $5,500 charge on my settlement. And I went and it was assigned to a freight bill number, a load number. And I went and looked up that load and it was a load from 2 years prior that I hauled for Volvo, hauling auto parts between like Laredo, Texas and Knoxville, Tennessee. And yeah, I went round and round in circles with the agent and with Landstar. And I had to start getting like pretty threatening on the phone to get paid on that load. They were just going to tell me I was shit out of luck. The agent stopped answering my calls. Like I contacted the agent, told them what was going on. They're like, oh, wow, let us look into that. And I'll give you a call back. And I called them back and they're like, they wouldn't answer the phone at the extension that they gave me. So I tried calling for a few hours, couldn't reach them. So then I just called their main number and I said, hey, I can't reach this person. You know, they were supposed to call me back. They didn't. And they're like, oh, they're not available. And they just kept doing that to me. They wouldn't answer their phone at that extension, and they kept telling me that they weren't available. So they were just like stonewalling me. So I ended up calling Landstar, and Landstar called them, and Landstar was like, yeah, the customer didn't pay. So sorry. I'm like, yeah, that's not the end of this story. And I went round and round in circles with Landstar. I was never able to talk to the agent again. The agent never would answer the phone. They wouldn't return my emails, nothing. The agent like dropped all contact with me and ignored me. So all contact from that point forward was with Landstar. And I told Landstar, my contract says that I get paid for loads whether the customers pay or not. I don't care who pays me for this load, whether it's the agent or Landstar or who, but somebody's paying me for this load. And the agent ended up, Landstar forced the agent to pay me for the load. So I got my money back. But yeah, they don't adhere to that 90-day rule. I've been charged back on loads 2 years after I delivered them. So if Landstar ever pulls some chargeback crap like this, doesn't pay me for a load, and then they try to go back on that 90-day crap, I will throw that 2-year charge back in their face, and I will not relent. I will fight it to the ends of the earth. I don't care if it's $50 or $5 million. I am relentless on this stuff. Like, if somebody owes me money, like, this is the reason I don't think I would do well in prison. Like, I'm the type of person that, on the principle alone, like, I will fight you to the death if you owe me a toothpick and you don't pay me back. Like, I'm too aggressive for prison. I'm way too confrontational for prison. That's one of my hobbies, is to watch prison documentaries. I think it's really like, it's really interesting to watch prison documentaries. And I've actually thought about, man, I could go and like commit some kind of crime and go to prison for the rest of my life. I think I have the type of personality that prison wouldn't bother me. I'm a reclusive person. So just being locked in a cell all day would not bother me at all. The only problem I would have would be the interaction with the other inmates. And I have some personality issues that I would probably be getting into fights all the time. Either that or I'd be like a pod boss, one or the other. Because I'm just like too confrontational, too aggressive. Yeah. I won't let things go. I know that there are a lot of people out there that they would probably look at this and be like, oh, they charged back $700. That sucks. And they might make some little effort. Maybe they'll email the agent be like, I don't know. And they'll just leave it at that. There are people out there like that. I am not that kind of person. Like, I will spend hundreds of hours on $50. We're looking at dry van loads, aren't we? So that's what I'm dealing with right now. Let's talk about, we still haven't even talked about the load that I have booked, and fuel prices. Fuel prices have been very erratic for the last few months. There was a refinery fire that caused a spike in fuel prices. There's a whole bunch of refinery issues along the West Coast. That's ongoing drama that's been happening for years, that's caused massive price fluctuations along the West Coast. For those of you who haven't been following what's going on, basically California is run by the cult of the radical left. And they have this ridiculously stupid ideology that they are anti what they call fossil fuels. There's absolutely zero evidence that petroleum products are created by fossils or biomass. And it doesn't make any sense. Like, just turn your brain on for a second and think about this. We find oil in massive oceans. How is it that much biomass got into that small of an area. Like, do you have any idea how many plants and animals would have to be put into that lake to turn into a lake of oil? Like, that just doesn't make any sense. The idea that petroleum products are created by like biomass degrading over hundreds of thousands or millions of years, that is a really old theory that has no supporting evidence, and there are people to this day that still like think that's it. It's 100%. It's fossil fuels. There's no evidence to support that it's fossil fuels. Anyway, that's like, there's a lot of things like that that really piss me off about the level of ignorance. Like artificial intelligence. We have these LLMs, large language models. These are just programs. They operate exactly like other programs operate at their core. And the marketing and sales people have called them AI, artificial intelligence. There's absolutely zero intelligence to these programs that they're calling AI. They have abused the term AI so much to describe something that is not AI, it's LLMs, that they've had to come up with a new term to describe AI. They call it AGI now, artificial general intelligence, to distinguish it from the misrepresentation of AI that they use for LLMs, for sales and marketing purposes. And I don't know who started perpetuating that nonsense. I don't know if it was Elon Musk with his, he calls his lane assist crap AI. There's zero intelligence to it. So whenever people are out there asking these chat programs questions, and the chat program comes back with this ridiculous radical left ideology, it's like, yeah, fossil fuels, we need to stop using fossil fuels, or whatever other radical left crap they come back with. Why is it responding that way? Because it was programmed to respond that way. That's the data it was given. It's just doing what it's programmed to do. And people are like stupid people, ignorant people who think it's intelligent are sitting there saying, oh, the AI also agrees with our ideology. So that's a third party neutral right there. So we're right. So, there's a lot of stuff like that in the world that just piss me off. And people buy it up because they're ignorant. They don't know any better. Anyway, what was I talking about before I got onto this tangent? Oh, the fossil fuels and all that stuff. So the petroleum. So the West Coast is basically the entire West Coast. Oregon, Washington, California is all run by the cult of the radical left. And our civilization is built upon petroleum products. Almost all of our technology as a civilization relies on petroleum products. You can't have solar panels or wind turbines or any of that stuff without petroleum products. And these geniuses over on the radical left want to stop using petroleum products. They want to stop all petroleum product usage. So you basically want a mass extinction. Like, our civilization would collapse. We would have an extinction level event if somehow we were able to stop using all petroleum products overnight. No more electronics, no more circuit boards, no more fuel, no more power plants, no more transportation, no more shipping, nothing. It would all collapse. So these morons are perpetuating this nonsense, and what they're doing along the West Coast is they're trying to shut down all of the refineries. And for those of you who are not aware, California has like their own set of rules. And part of their own set of rules is they have their own mixture of fuel. They have their own fuel requirements that are different than the rest of the country. So they have to have fuel specially made for California. There are only a couple of refineries in the world that make California fuel. And they're trying to shut those refineries down. That's the type of big brains we got going on over there. Well, as we're getting closer and closer to that shutdown point, they're starting to realize the impact that that's going to have. So they've started backpedaling on shutting down the refineries, and they're working towards giving them extensions to, stay operating for longer, because these big brain radical left cultists, they thought that we would be, in flying electric vehicles by now. They thought that's how, technology works, is that you just, you create a law that says that we have to have flying electric vehicles, and it just miracles itself into existence. That's their theology. That's just not how the world works, though. So we have this up and down on the West Coast on fuel because of this back and forth with their war on petroleum and trying to shut down refineries, and then changing their mind and being like, yeah, well, actually, we do need those refineries until we get those electric flying cars, and, we can power our iPhones on unicorn farts. So until then, we're going to let you keep running. But the thing is that these refineries are really, really old. They need to be replaced, and no one is going to invest into replacing them whenever they're trying to, the West Coast is trying to shut them down. So these refineries are like going to eventually get shut down no matter what, because they're just getting so old, and they're not willing to invest billions of dollars into renovating them whenever they're going to be shut down at any moment. So it's just, you can see where the car is headed. You could see the wall that the car is going to hit. You just can't tell exactly how far away it is. That's the West Coast refinery situation. You don't know when exactly it's going to happen, but you're going to hit that wall at some point. So, I mean, that's part of the problem. We had the central part of the country, we had a refinery fire that caused a disruption. We have what's going on in Venezuela. Venezuela has not really been having much of an impact on fuel prices because, we've been sanctioning Venezuelan oil for a long time. So us doing a blockade, a siege, I've even heard them calling it a quarantine. Let's call it everything except war. We're at war with Venezuela, but we're not going to call it that. We're going to call it a quarantine. It's ridiculous. The way that they spin things by just calling it something else. I don't know. Maybe I'm just really, really dumb and ignorant, but whenever our military goes into another country, kills a whole bunch of their people, attacks a military compound, and kidnaps the president of that country, and we are blockading their ports, not allowing ships in and out, to me, those are all acts of war, which makes us at war with Venezuela. But let's just backpedal. Let's take a step back, calm down a little bit. It's not a war. It's a quarantine. Oh my goodness. This is Orwellian shit right here. If you have never read George Orwell's 1984, it is George Orwell. I get Orson Welles and George Orwell mixed up all the time. I'm 90% sure it's George Orwell. George Orwell's 1984. I think that is a book that that should be required reading in school. Because that is like a blueprint of what we're going through. And there are so many phrases and so many, in just normal everyday conversation, there's so many references to George Orwell's 1984 that, if you've never read that book, you're going to be missing out on a lot of references that happen in normal everyday life, like dystopian. That's I'm not sure if that's fully accredited to just George Orwell's 1984, but 1984 is a dystopian world. It's an authoritarian dystopian world. Anyway, but yeah, because we've had sanctions on Venezuelan oil for so long, the disruption in Venezuelan oil is really not having much of an impact on the fuel markets. What is having an enormous impact on the fuel markets right now is Iran. You know what? Let me check this out. There's just almost no news coverage of what's going on in Iran. Let's check this out. Let me pause this. All right, so this is CNN. Let's see what the major headlines are. Nancy Guthrie kidnapping, Winter Olympics, Obama on aliens, luxury steamer wreck found, GOP. Okay, so this is some political propaganda, some anti-Republican propaganda. This is about the kidnapping. Some famous person's mother got kidnapped, and that's like major. That's the most important news in the world right now. That's the major news on every outlet. Here's some more anti-Republican immigration articles. Here's some more anti-Republican immigration articles. They have an entire category of political propaganda to make immigration enforcement look really bad. It's like, oh, there's really, really awesome people that entered the country illegally. So we should just let everybody enter the country illegally. Princess Beatrice, Epstein scandal, Epstein files. Some actor has something to say about another actor. That's apparently really important. What do we got going on? Let's keep going down. Oh, here's some. Is this the sporting section? No, this is just a sporting. So there's some sports story. Obama clarifying that he didn't say aliens exist. So some TV producer was killed. Here's some more anti-Trump crap. Is there anything about Iran anywhere? You know what? I'm just going to have to use search. Let's. Uh-oh. Am I still recording? Sorry, I just had a power disruption. It's really windy outside. Okay. Looks like it did not interrupt the recording. My screen flickered, turned off for a second. Let's search for Iran. New round of U.S.-Iran nuclear talks set for Tuesday. This is like over halfway down their page. And that is the only match. There's just this one article in the world section about 60% down their website. Actually, it's closer to 60%. It's almost at the very bottom of the web page. That's it. Let's try Fox News. This is a radical left site. Let's try a radical right site. Let me pause this. Well, apparently the power disruption knocked out my internet. What it probably did is it reset my router, my modem and everything, and they're all going to have to restart, so it'll be back up in a second. So let me pause this again. The reason the video didn't get interrupted is because my computer is on a backup power supply. It's on an uninterruptible power supply. So my monitors are not on a UPS, so they flickered off for a second, but my computer did not turn off. That's the reason the video didn't get interrupted, but everything else in the house pretty much went off. All right, so let's see what we got here. Oh, there's a section up at the very top for Iran. So if you want to know what's going on with Iran, you can click right there. So if you don't find that little button, let's see what you're going through. More about that kidnapping of the famous person's mom. That's major headline everywhere. That's the most important thing ever. Could you imagine if your child was kidnapped and not a single news outlet is covering your story, but they're covering this like 90-year-old woman that got kidnapped because her daughter is a news reporter or something? How would that make you feel? That sucks. Minnesota Republican allegedly fined thousands of voters missing key data. So this is political crap, political propaganda, which is mainly what all these websites are. Like almost all the news sites are owned by political activists or run by political activists. So I don't know of any news sites that are neutral. They're all either right or left. And the left outnumbers the right by a significant amount. Here's some racist political crap. Oh, here's Trump talking about the kidnapping of Maduro, how a bunch of the pilots got their legs hit pretty bad. Logan Paul and Pokemon cards. Why is this front page news? This is like some. You remember the National Enquirer? I don't even know if it still exists, but I remember when I was a kid and you were at the checkout at the grocery store and they would have all those ridiculously stupid magazines right there at the checkout. And they had National Enquirer like Bat Boy and stuff like that. These are things that people don't take seriously. Nobody really cares about. There's some weird like cat ladies that read that crap. That has become front page news on supposedly the like mainstream news outlets, which I don't like calling them news outlets. These are media outlets. They don't report news. They report political propaganda, entertainment like crap, and Bat Boy stuff. All right, I'm not seeing anything about Iran. Wait. Is this it? Trump unveils maritime action plan as China dominates global shipbuilding. Close, but not Iran. You know what? I'm again going to have to use Control F and search for Iran. So we have that little button up at the very top. We have 6 matches. All right. Iranian prince claims 36,000 killed by regime as he asks Trump for intervention. So the old ruling class of Iran is wanting the United States to go in and overthrow the government so that they can retake power. They've been asking for that for a long time. So that's an Iran story. What else we got going on here? Here's Iranian crown prince makes a new appeal. This is the same damn story that we just looked at. What is this? U.S. military storms secret ship. Badass footage released. So this is about some, I think it's a Venezuelan ship that is, it might be an Iranian ship. But this is related to the Iran story, I think. So this might actually be one. Nobel laureate fighting for life after barbaric assault at notorious prison in Iran. Just some anti-Iran story. Iran says U.S. must prove they want to deal on nuclear talks in Geneva. Okay, this is an actual story on it. And this is another of the exact same story about the former rulers of Iran wanting the U.S. to put them back in power. So there's like 3 or 4 stories of those jackasses. So yeah, as you can see, there's almost no coverage about what's going on in Iran. Let's go back over here to this. In our mainstream media, and I'll keep scrolling through this. Iran is not really getting much of any coverage. Iran should be the main story. It should replace this Nancy Guthrie kidnapping story. Iran should be a bigger story than that. What's going on in Iran? Well, Trump and Israel have both made decrees that they will not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapons program. And Iran has said that they're going to have a nuclear program. Now, they keep backpedaling on whether it's going to be a weapons program. They keep claiming that it's just for, power plants and stuff like that. And then there have been times when they've said that, no, we will make nuclear weapons if we want. So Iran's really wishy-washy on that kind of stuff. And we are trying to negotiate some kind of deal with Iran so that we can limit their nuclear program and keep it from being a weapons program so that we don't go back to war with Iran. We were just recently at war with Iran not long ago through Israel. Iran and Israel were bombing each other. For those of you who have already forgotten about that. So we are in negotiations, or trying to have negotiations with Iran about their nuclear program. And we have been trying to sanction Iran and stop the flow of oil coming, out of Iran. We've been trying to cut off oil from Iran. And Iran is retaliating by boarding ships in the Strait of Hormuz. I think there were 2 ships in the last week or so that Iran boarded in the Strait of Hormuz. And that has caused global fears of Iran disrupting the flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. About 20% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz on ships. If Iran blockades that, it will have catastrophic effects around the world. 20% doesn't sound like a lot. We still have 80%, but just a 20% disruption would be cataclysmic around the world. And Iran is also very close allies with Yemen. And there's another strait that is incredibly important for not just the movement of oil, but world trade. I forget the name of the strait, but if Iran gets into a major conflict, part of their war plan is to block the Strait of Hormuz and block the Strait of whatever in the hell it's called over off the coast of Yemen. They have troops in both countries to do that. These are really narrow straits, and they will shut them down. They will fire missiles at any ship that tries to go through. Let me pull up a map and show you. Let's figure out what the strait is called. All right, we got the big map pulled up. There we go. All right, so this right here is the Strait of Hormuz. This little narrow section, Strait of Hormuz, right there. You have Iran on the north side of it. And a whole bunch of countries on the south side of it. But this little narrow section right here, this is where Iran is constantly threatening to shut down the Strait of Hormuz and stop 20% of oil from moving around the country. And then over here, off the coast of Yemen, this little strait right here, how do you even pronounce this? Bab al-Mandab Strait. They will work with Yemen to block this strait. And this is where the Suez Canal is at. Right here, Suez. This Suez Canal is a major artery for world trade. And if they block that Bab al Mandab Strait right there, that will shut down the Suez Canal. So that's Iran's big plan. That's their big threat to keep anybody from messing with them. They don't have nuclear weapons, but they do have the ability to shut down those two straits. So that's their big threat if anybody pushes them too hard. If they get into an all-out war with anyone, they will shut down those two straits. What they do for the purpose of negotiations, to get leverage in negotiations or to make threats, is they don't shut down the straits, but they will disrupt the straits. They'll do what they're doing right now. Like, we are trying to have negotiations about nuclear treaties with Iran, and they're disrupting the Strait of Hormuz to gain leverage in those nuclear talks. They're showing the world, hey, we can do this if we want. So you better give us a really good deal. You better give us what we want in the deal, or we can do this. All right, let's keep scrolling. So that is the thing that's having a huge impact on the price of fuel right now. We've seen roughly a 50-cent per gallon increase in fuel over the last couple of weeks with Iran disrupting the Strait of Hormuz. What else is happening with Iran? We have a massive military movement headed over to the Middle East because of Iran disrupting the Strait of Hormuz. It's looking like we may be going to war with Iran. And that's something that is not being covered in major world news. Like, you go to all these media outlets, Fox News, CNN, and you're not finding any articles on this. But there is a massive military movement toward the Middle East. Let me see if I can find an article somewhere about it. CNN or Fox or somebody might be covering it. It's just you have to search for it to find it. It's not on their main page. Let me see if I can find an article that talks about the massive military movement. I haven't done a lot of research on it, but some people are claiming that the amount of military that we're moving to the Middle East right now is at the same level or higher than whenever we invaded Iraq. That's how much military we're moving over there, supposedly. Let me pause this and see if I can find an article on it. All right, I can't find anything that gives any kind of exact numbers other than just talking about a huge military buildup for a sustained operation against Iran. This is Reuters talking about, we've already got an aircraft carrier battle group over there, and they've sent a second aircraft carrier battle group over there, and they're sending a lot more assets over there. There was a YouTube video that gave details about the massive amount of air assets that we're sending over there, a whole bunch of air tankers, lots and lots and lots of air assets. It's as much, if not more, assets than we sent during the Gulf War. Gulf War II, probably Gulf War I as well. But I'm not going to perpetuate some random YouTube video if I can't find anything supporting it. I can't find anything that gives exact numbers like that YouTube video is giving. But I found several articles talking about a large amount of forces being moved over there, but they're not giving any kind of details on the forces. This is another article that just talks about the U.S. military is preparing for the possibility of sustained weeks-long operations against Iran if President Donald Trump orders an attack. Two U.S. officials told Reuters, in what could become a far more serious conflict than previously seen between the countries. So yeah, we are not just talking about going to war with Iran. We're moving the military into position to go to war with Iran. So it's not just talk. There's a lot of military assets being moved into position to go to war with Iran. And this is let me go back to scrolling. I'll scroll while I talk. You can look at the load board while I ramble. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Russia was moving assets into position to attack Ukraine for several months leading up to the attack on Ukraine. Like, we knew that Russia was going to attack Ukraine. You don't put the military in that kind of, it's very expensive. It uses a lot of resources to put your military into position for an attack. And Russia put their military into position for an attack. They weren't just moving military into position, they were building bases along the Ukraine border in preparation for the attack. And approximately like a month before the attack, or a few weeks before the attack, they moved in large supplies of blood along the Ukraine border in preparation for the attack. And mainstream media did very little coverage on that. But if you dug around, you did a lot of research on it, you would find people talking about that and what it means. Context is important. That blood is only good for about 30 days. So for them to move in large amounts of blood to the front lines, that tells you that they're planning to attack within 30 days. And they did. They attacked within 30 days of moving that blood to the front lines. So all this military movement and everything, what we're told about it is not what's really going on. There are people in the know that know what's going on. And they know what all this military movement means. And you don't do this kind of stuff for show. It uses too many resources. It's way too expensive. You don't just, this is not saber rattling to move, large hundreds of millions, billions of dollars in resources, move them into position. You don't do that to just try to saber rattle. Now, we will move aircraft carrier battle groups around to saber rattle. That's part of saber rattling. We have those things on the move all the time. But to move other assets, like a large amount of Air Force assets, that's not saber rattling. That's actual preparation. So that should be the mainstream media's main news headline instead of Nancy Guthrie's elderly mother that being kidnapped. I feel bad for her being kidnapped, but it should not be world news. This should not be our main focus around the world right now is Nancy Guthrie's kidnapped mother. I'm glad that they're covering it in the news, but it should not be on the front page. It should not be our focus. Our focus, there's lots of things that we should focus on, but Iran is a really big one right now. It looks like we are about to go to war with Iran. And we're getting very little coverage in the media. It's having a big impact on fuel prices. And if it continues to escalate, which it looks like it is going to continue to escalate, the fuel prices are going to continue to rise. Sky's the limit on fuel prices. They could go up dramatically in a short amount of time. Just over the last 6 months to a year, I've seen fuel prices go up by $1 a gallon in a week. So, and I can't remember what exactly that was over. That might have been the fire. No, I think that was only 50 cents a gallon whenever that fire broke out on that refinery in the central part of the country. When I was in Omaha, I think fuel prices went up by 50 cents a gallon. I can't remember what caused the $1 a gallon swing in a week. But I do recall a dollar a gallon increase in a week. That might have been when, that might have been during the conflict between Israel and Iran. That might have been something happening in that conflict, or it might have been whenever Ukraine started bombing Russian oil refineries. I'm not sure what the event was, but I do recall fuel going up by $1 a gallon in approximately a week over some event. And if war breaks out with Iran, a direct conflict with Iran, sky's the limit on fuel prices. We could see $10 a gallon diesel within a couple weeks. The sky is the limit. It just depends on what all happens. If Iran goes out and blockades the Strait of Hormuz, a full blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, firing on any ship that tries to go through, and they shut down the Strait of the the Baba Babunga, whatever strait, if they shut those two down, wow, wow, that would be catastrophic around the entire world. We would put a tremendous amount of military assets into the region to open that up. I don't think they would be able to block it for very long, because they would basically piss everyone in the world off if they did that. Like, even their allies could turn against them if they did that, because it would have a catastrophic impact around the entire world. It would affect all of their allies negatively. So I can't see a situation where Iran would actually fully block both of those unless they thought they had no other option. Like, if they felt like the government was about to be overthrown, then they would do, like, desperate people do desperate things. And that is a desperate act, because it would piss everyone in the world off, and it would cause a massive retaliation. We would have tons of military assets, not just the United States, but European countries. You might even have Russia and China coming in and helping to open those ports up. Or those, not ports, but those straits up. Like, I don't think they would do that initially, but if it lasted like weeks, I don't think Iran could keep those things closed for weeks. If they blockaded those, I think they would only be able to blockade them for a few days. Just however long it took for us to get like an aircraft carrier battle group over to that area. And then we would push Iran out of the area. So a complete blockade, I don't think Iran could maintain a complete blockade for very long, but they could disrupt it for a very long time. You know, they could just fire missiles from a long range away at any ship trying to pass through. And, you know, we would be shooting those missiles down with our Patriot missile systems, our anti-air systems. But it would probably cause a lot of ships to stop traveling through the strait because of how dangerous it is. Insurance companies would like cut off insurance to anyone traveling through the strait. And so the disruption, like a full blockade, I can't see how Iran could maintain a full blockade for very long, but they could cause a serious disruption for a long period of time. They could maintain a serious disruption for weeks, maybe even months. And that is the reason fuel prices spike every time something happens with Iran, is fear of them blocking those two straits. We're at 2 hours on the video. It is 11:30 a.m. I still got an hour. Let me check my email, see if I got an email from anybody. No email, and I still got an hour and a half until I need to call contractor services back and ask them what the hell's going on with my money. So I'll keep scrolling through this list. Are we at the bottom or close? I don't think we're at the bottom. I don't know if I'm going to reach the bottom of this list, but we'll talk about the load that I have booked. And once I finish that, then I'll probably wrap up the video. So that actually brings up a lot of information. I booked a load sometime last week, a week and a half ago. I booked a load, another one of those Ream Rude air conditioner loads that was picking up in Lewisville, Texas, north side of Dallas, and it had 3 deliveries in the Portland area. The final delivery was in Eugene, Oregon, which is a little ways south of Portland. I don't know how far south of Portland, like maybe 100 miles south of Portland. And that load was paying $7,600 on the full rate. I was going to make about $5,300 on that load after the percentage cuts. And about 15 minutes after I booked the load, I get a call back from the agent and they said something changed on the load and we want to give you the option to stay on the load or not. And I said, okay, what changed? And I'm expecting, oh, there's an extra stop on it. And I'm like, okay, no big deal. No. They said the rate on the load is $5,800. I was like, what? They said, we negotiated a new contract recently, and this load was accidentally posted at our old contract rate. So we have to change it to the new contract rate, which is $5,800. I said, so what's changing on the load is that you're reducing the price by almost $2,000. And he said, yes. And I said, yeah, go ahead and take the load off of me and I'll think about it. I'll call you back if I'm interested in it. And they said, okay, thanks, bye. And took the load off of me. So I don't know if I'm going to be hauling any more of those Ream Rude loads. They were paying really well, which loads going into the Pacific Northwest, the Seattle-Portland area, generally pay a premium because freight coming out of that area pays nothing. So you get paid extra to go into bad areas like Florida, Colorado, the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, Portland. All of those areas, you get paid extra to go into those areas because those are areas of consumption. They consume more than they produce. There's a lot more freight going into those areas than coming out of those areas. So you get paid extra to go in there and you end up coming out at a loss. The loads coming out of those areas pay nothing. They pay very little. So with this massive decrease in the amount on the Ream Rude contract, with this huge decrease in what that contract is paying, now the loads going into the Seattle-Portland area on that Ream Rude contract are paying like market average rates. They're not paying a premium to go into the Seattle-Portland area. They're just paying like $250, $260 a mile. Let me see what that is. That load was around 2,100 miles, and it was paying $5,800. $276 a mile. So that load's paying $276 a mile. That's not a bad rate for a normal load that's going to a normal area. Now that's the full rate. I only get about 70% of that. Now $276 a mile, if you're getting $276 a mile gross to the truck, that's amazing. That's the full rate. I only get about 70% of that, which is not amazing. Like you can be profitable on that. You're getting about $2 a mile to the truck on that, which is that's a solid amount of money. It's not amazing. It's not bad. If you can run at a $2 a mile average and as an owner operator, you can make good money. You can be well off. You're not going to be like rich, but you can be successful. So it's paying a decent rate if it were going to a decent freight market. But for going to the Pacific Northwest, that is a bad rate. That's not good at all. So they ended up not reposting that load until like 4 or 5 days later. The load did not pick up until the 19th. And I booked that load on like the 10th. And then they relisted that load on like Friday. I think Friday is when they relisted that load. I don't know if it's still on the load board, but it sat on the load board for several hours. I think somebody ended up booking it, which doesn't make any sense to me. It's just way too cheap. And on Friday, I ended up booking a new load through Don Flores, DDB agency, one of my favorite agents. Those retail shelving units out of Terrell, Texas, that I used to haul all the time. Well, I started hauling the ream loads because they were paying so well. Well, now the ream contract got negotiated to a terrible rate. So I went back to hauling loads for Dawn, and I booked a load to Walla Walla, Washington, paying $3.24 a mile on the full rate, which 3.24 times 0.7 comes out to 226.8 or 227 a mile. So I'm going to be running at approximately 227 a mile. And it has like 100 extra miles on the load. I plotted the load address to address, and it's 1,900 miles, address to address, actual miles. And the load's paying like 2,000 miles. So there's like 100 extra miles that they have on the load at, the 324 a mile that it's paying. So it's got like an extra $324 on the load. So the first load that I was looking at booking was 2,100 miles, and it was going like 100 miles past Portland. This load is going way short of Portland, and it's paying 2,000 miles, but it's actually only 1,900 miles. So this load is paying like $6,100. Let me pause this while I just pull up the info so I don't have to guess. All right, I'm pretty sure that there's no sensitive information on this page. I don't edit, so if I do something stupid and show any sensitive information, then I'll just delete the video. And we're already 2 hours in, so I don't want to do that. But this is the actual freight bill. This is what they look like. So the total amount that the load's paying is $6,174.48. The fuel surcharge is high, 52 cents a mile. So I'm getting $1,029.08 on fuel surcharge. I get 100% of that. And I get 65% of the line haul. The line haul rate is $2.60 a mile. The fuel surcharge is 52 cents a mile, so it's $3.12 a mile. Did I say 324 earlier? I think I did. It's $3.12 a mile. That's right? 312, 40, yeah, $3.12 a mile. So let's figure out what I'm actually making on this. So 5145.4 times 0.65 is $3,344.51. Plus, I'm getting all of the fuel surcharge of 1,029.08. So what I'm getting paid gross to the truck is $4,373.59. And the mileage is 1979. So I'm making $221 a mile. The load's paying $312 a mile. What I'm actually getting paid gross to the truck is $221 a mile. It's paying 1,979 miles. And according to Google, the mileage is almost 100 miles short of that. So they're paying like 100 miles extra. I got to be careful not to scroll on this page and show something that I don't want you to see. But yeah, this is what a freight bill looks like from Landstar, and it has the pay breakdown. And the weight is 35,000. It is not 35,000 pounds. These loads are generally around 15,000 pounds. Dawn does not know what the weight is going to be until they load the trailer. So she just puts 35,000 on all of her loads whenever she lists them. All right, so let's go back here. Anyway, that's the load. It picks up on the 20th and it doesn't deliver until the 25th. The 25th is Wednesday. So it picks up Friday. It's a preloaded trailer that's supposed to be ready by Friday, but it doesn't deliver until Wednesday of the following week. And I don't know what the details are on this particular load, but usually on these retail shelving loads, the appointments are like strict. They won't unload you early. You need to be there on time. Usually she puts in the comments on her loads that these are very strict appointments. You're often meeting like work crews to unload you. So these are like stores that are being built and the work crew is scheduled to show up to unload you at that specific time. So you need to be there at that time because there's going to be a lot of people show up to unload the trailer at that time. And if you're not there on time, then, you know, people are going to get paid to sit around. It's going to cost the company a lot of extra money. So that's the way these loads are usually booked. That's that's the comment that she puts on all of her loads. But the majority of the loads that I deliver are for these retail shelving units are usually to like grocery store distribution centers, or directly to grocery stores. There has been, I can't remember a time when I actually delivered to like a work unit. I met like a work unit. But that's the disclaimer that she has, is that the appointment times are extremely strict. But I'm delivering to a Super One Foods. It looks like it's already an established grocery store. So who knows? But I doubt that I'm going to be able to deliver early. I'm probably not even going to try to deliver early. For something like a trailer load of shelving units, these grocery stores don't have a whole lot of storage space. So they're going to be expecting them to be delivered at a specific time, and they're probably going to have to make preparations to receive them. So I don't want to try showing up early and they're like, oh, well, we're not ready for they try to accommodate me, but they're not ready for it. Like they haven't moved stuff yet to, um, it's not like a normal delivery. It's not like food that I'm delivering to a grocery store. It's shelving units, so they might have to tear down old shelving units, and they're not going to do that like a week early. They're going to do it at the last second. So there's probably going to be a whole lot of moving parts on this delivery, and I don't want to try to deliver early. I just don't want to cause a bunch of drama. A lot of these people that you deliver to are really accommodating. They're really nice. Some of them are not, but a lot of them are really accommodating. And I just don't want to put them in that position where it's an accommodating person and they have to do a whole bunch of stuff to receive the load. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to do a trip plan to see how long it's going to take me to get there. And I'm probably not going to pick the trailer up until Friday night, late at night. And I'm probably still going to get there like a couple of days early. It takes me approximately 3 days to drive from Dallas to Portland. And they're giving me 5 days to get there. So I'll have to check weather and, see what the weather situation is. If there's going to be any kind of bad weather, then I'm going to leave as early as possible. But if the weather looks good, I'm probably still going to leave quite early, like Friday night. I doubt that I'm going to wait until Saturday night. Um, I don't know. I think I'm going to end up picking it up. These loads are also usually loaded a day or two early. So she might call me up on Tuesday, tomorrow, and tell me that the trailer's loaded and ready to pick up. And I might pick it up early, or I might wait until Friday night. I don't know. I still haven't done the trip plan. It takes approximately 3 days, but more detailed trip plan and find out exactly how long I think it's going to take. And then I'll take off and go pick the load up. I still haven't decided when I'm going to pick the trailer up. Oh, and trailer utilization did not make an attempt to steal my trailer. I went over trailer utilization's policy, I think, is 11 days. It used to be like whenever I first started with Landstar, trailer utilization told me it was like 13 days or something like that. And the last time that they told me what it was like 11 days, 10 or 11 days. So I think that they reduced their policy on stealing a trailer from somebody. And I actually went over the 10 or 11 days, whatever it is. And I was really afraid that they were going to steal the trailer from me. And whenever I booked that very first load that I booked, I think I was like at day 12 or 13 or something like that at the house. And I booked that load, and then they canceled it like 15 minutes later. And then I was no longer worried about trailer utilization stealing my trailer, because the way they determine idle time is the time in between having a load on your truck, which I'm quite certain a lot of people know that. And I suspect that a lot of people abuse that. I suspect that a lot of people that are doing extended home time in order to keep their trailer from being stolen from trailer utilization, they're probably booking loads that don't pick up for a very long time. So they'll set it home for a week and then book a load that doesn't pick up for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then set on that load for a week or two and then cancel it off to keep trailer utilization from stealing their trailer. I suspect there's people that do that. I won't do that, because that's just, I wouldn't want somebody to do that to me if I was an agent. Like, you're compromising the account by doing some crap like that. You know, booking a load that you know you're not going to haul. That's taking away time that the agent has to cover that load. And it could jeopardize the account. It could jeopardize that agent's livelihood. It could cause a lot of people a lot of issues. And I wouldn't do something like that. But that load canceling on me reset my my time. So then I wasn't worried about trailer utilization stealing the trailer. But I ended up booking a load a few days later. But it didn't pick up until the 20th. The first load that I booked that canceled on me was supposed to pick up on the 19th. And then the load I booked a few days later was scheduled to pick up on the 20th. And what my plan is to get another window load after this one. Try to get another window load. It looks like whoever was doing the Saya loads from Oklahoma City to Henderson to Denver, Oklahoma City to Denver, there was some idiot that was doing these loads, and it looks like they stopped doing these loads. Because one of the times I called Saya on a load, I asked them about this Oklahoma City to Denver load. I was like, did you guys lose that contract? Because I haven't seen that one posted in a while. And they're like, no, there was a driver that said that they wanted to do it. So we stopped putting it on the load board and just started giving it to that one driver every week. So there was one driver that was just doing this load from Oklahoma City to Denver every week. And I don't know why they would do that. It doesn't make any sense to me. One of the biggest problems with this load is that it's a same day delivery. You're supposed to pick it up real early in the morning and then deliver it that evening. And it's listed right here as 616 miles. That sounds reasonable. You can do 616 miles in a single drive shift, same day delivery. But let's look at the actual miles. Let me pause this and pull up a map. All right, so we got a map pulled up, And we're going from SIA terminal to SIA terminal. So what I did was I searched for the SIA terminal in Oklahoma City. We have the exact address of the SIA terminal in Oklahoma City. And then we have the exact address of the SIA terminal in Henderson, Colorado, Denver. Oh, this has us taking the toll road. All right, so this is basically, I don't know where they're coming up with 616 miles. Maybe there's some dirt road. Maybe there's some goat path you can take that's 616 miles. 675 miles. Terminal to terminal. 675 miles. That does not include driving to the terminal to pick up the load. That does not include, after you deliver the load, driving somewhere to find a parking spot. How in the hell are you supposed to do 675 miles in a single drive shift? Most people cannot do 675 miles in a single drive shift. You're actually going to have to do over 700 miles in a single drive shift. How in the hell do you do that? The speed limit is only 70. So even if your truck is capable of going faster than 65, the speed limit is only 70 for trucks across this route. So at a 65 mile per hour average, so let's say you're going 70 and you're able to maintain a 65 mile per hour average across the entire route. What's the theoretical maximum mileage you can do? So let's do 11 times 65. 715 miles. So theoretically, in like a fictional perfect world, if you were to drive your exact full 11 hours of drive time down to the second, which is not theoretically possible. Well, it's theoretically possible. It's not realistically possible. If you were somehow able to do that, you could theoretically drive 715 miles in a single drive shift. That's the theoretical maximum if you're driving on roads with a 70 mile per hour speed limit. To have a 65 mile per hour average across the entire route, you would have to have little or no delays. That means you can't be driving over any big mountains. You have to maintain really close to 70 miles per hour the whole drive to have a 65 mile per hour average. So, like, this is not really possible legally for a driver to do. You're going to have to bend the rules somewhere to do this load. You're going to have to use personal conveyance to pick the load up and to drop the load off afterward. Like, to go to the terminal to pick the load up, you're going to have to use personal conveyance. And then after you deliver the load, you're going to have to abuse personal conveyance to go find a place to park. And you're going to be cutting corners everywhere you can on the logs to be able to do this load. So you're not going to, I don't think it's possible to legally do this load. You're probably going to have to speed. You know, if your truck is governed above 70, speed limit 70, maybe you're doing 72 instead of 70 to pick up a few extra minutes. But I've thought about doing this load before because there were some good loads coming out of Denver going to Salt Lake. So what I was looking at is they're paying a premium on this load to go from Oklahoma City to Denver. And then they're paying a premium on another load to go from Denver to Salt Lake. Normally the loads coming out of the Denver area are terrible. But SIA, on the CGI agency, has a SIA contract, and the loads coming out of Denver going to Salt Lake were actually paying like another premium. So I was like, I could just bounce a couple of loads Denver to Salt Lake and then grab a load Salt Lake coming back over this direction. I was trying to figure out a way to just do this over and over again because they had these loads every week. So I could go Oklahoma City, Denver, Denver, Salt Lake, and then find some load from Salt Lake to get back over somewhere close to Oklahoma City, and then just do that over and over again, and I could make some pretty good money. And then the loads disappeared off the load board. And it was because somebody decided to do it as basically a dedicated run, told Saya that they would do the load every week, and they stopped posting it on the load board. Well, it's back on the load board again. So whoever was doing that ran out of business. You know, they went out of business, or they leased on somewhere else, or they decided to do something else. I don't know. A lot of people that do dedicated runs, I see a lot of them going out of business because most of these dedicated runs don't pay very well. And I've seen some people get into they make some really bad business decisions just so they can do a dedicated run. Like they're losing money. I'll give you an example. I was sitting in, what's that town in North Dakota? North of Fargo. We still got the map pulled up here. What in the hell? Grand something, is it? Grand Forks, yeah. I was sitting up here in Grand Forks at this mom and pop truck stop right here, Simonson Travel Center. And there's a military base right next door to this place. There was a convoy of military vehicles right here. Grand Forks. No, that's not it. That's the airport. Where's the military base? Grand Forks Air Force Base right here. While I was parked here at this Simonson Travel Center, there was this massive convoy of military vehicles that circled all the way around the parking lot. They circled all the way around the thing. I don't know what they were doing there, but they stopped there for some reason. But anyway, I ran into another Landstar driver while I was parked here, and he was on a dedicated run. And I asked him about the dedicated run, and he said it's a dedicated run that another driver was doing, and that other driver was on vacation, or his truck broke down, or he was sick, or for whatever reason, he took over this dedicated run for another driver, and he was going to be running it for a few months for this other driver. And I asked him, I was like, okay, well, what's dedicated running? He's like, oh, it's going back and forth between Grand Forks and Waco, Texas, I think it was. I was like, oh, that sounds like a really sweet gig. You know, just basically running up and down I-35, I-29 corridor. That's really awesome. He's like, oh, yeah, that's awesome. I was like, what's the pay on that? And it was like, it was really, really low. I want to say it was like $220 a mile. And I was like, oh, that's really good for a dedicated. That's your cut after the that's your percentage on it. And he's like, no, that's the total amount that it pays. I was like, what do you mean the total amount? So the full rate, like you're only getting about 70% of that 220. And he's like, yeah. And I said, how much are you making? I want to say he was making like $1.43 a mile. I'm pretty sure that I gave the exact amount in a video, but this was like 3 years ago, so I can't remember what exactly it was. But I want to say it was like $1.43 a mile is what he was making gross to the truck doing that load. That's not profitable. This guy had a brand new truck, a really nice brand new truck. I'm pretty sure I gave all the details in the video from back then. You can find the video where I'm in Grand Forks, North Dakota, like 3 years ago. It's Grand Forks, right? Yeah, Grand Forks, North Dakota. I'm sure I gave all the details back then, but that's the kind of ridiculous stuff people will do just to have a dedicated run. They'll run loads at a loss. The guy that told me about the Hobby Lobby account ran out of business doing the Hobby Lobby account. It's not a profitable dedicated run. And, he's a security guard now. Well, that's what he was last time I talked to him. He sold his truck, got out of trucking, and became like a security guard. Just ran him out of business. Speaking of the Hobby Lobby account, I got an email. Let me pause this and see if I can pull it up. All right. So the email has, I don't want to put their phone number and agency code and everything out there on blast. and their email address and all that stuff. So I don't have my email set up to hide all of the personal information. So I'm just going to read you the email. So I got an email from the agent that has the Hobby Lobby account, and they said, I'll read the exact what they sent me in the email. Hobby Lobby reached out and said there is heavy train volume coming in and they are needing trucks through the end of February. They said they can guarantee us containers through the end of February and possibly into March. We need more trucks! Exclamation, exclamation. If you are able to run, we need you. They are also allowing us to broker these out. So if you know of any other drivers that drive for other carriers and would be interested, please send them our way. Thank you. And I replied back with this. Hello. I would like to know the pay details. Thanks. They never replied back to me. They did not reply back to me with the pay details. Let me actually search this agency and see if they have any loads listed on the load board. It might have pay details if they have the load listed on the load board. Let me double check the agency code. Yeah, they don't have a single load listed on the load board. All right, let's go back to scrolling through loads. Yeah, I've got my load alert set up for the Portland area, and I'm looking for a window load. Did we finish scrolling through? Because we're back at the truck. We're back at the top. Oh, did I accidentally refresh this page or something? Did I screw up our scroll? We were down toward the bottom anyway. All right, let's do one last search. Let's do it in an actual area. Let's do Dallas. Lots of people in the Dallas area. Let's do 100 miles around Dallas. And instead of revenue, let's sort by rate per mile. Fort Worth to Pryor, Oklahoma, JQL. That's the Google account. 4,137 pounds. $1,700. You only get about 70% of that. But that's a pretty good one-day run. The only problem is it's not putting you in a very good area. But Dallas is a really solid freight market. We'll scroll through these real quick. But yeah, that's pretty much what's going on with me. Excuse me. Throat just dried out all of a sudden. Let's get a drink of tea. I like a little bit of tea with my sugar. You know, I tried unsweetened tea and I've tried black coffee. straight black coffee. And I realized that I hate coffee and I hate tea. What I like is sugar. I just need something to mix with my sugar. I can mix just about anything with sugar and I like it. But without sugar, I cannot stand tea and I cannot stand coffee. Which that reminds me, I'm about to go make a pot of coffee right now. As soon as I finish this video, I'm going to go make a pot of coffee. But yeah, that covers the load. Fuel prices are pretty high right now. And mainly what's going on in Iran is affecting fuel prices at the moment. So as it keeps escalating, fuel prices are likely to keep going up. And if something happens that de-escalates, then the prices will drop. What do I think is going to happen with Iran? Iran is notorious for being really, I don't know if you would say good negotiators or just really difficult to work with negotiators. They are notorious for manipulating negotiations and lying in negotiations. Like they'll agree to do stuff and just not follow through. They'll get you to agree to do things and you'll do what you're supposed to do and they won't do what they're supposed to do. Like they are Iran negotiations, they're notorious liars and they notoriously will try to influence negotiations, like what they're doing right now by disrupting the flow of goods through the Strait of Hormuz. That's them trying to manipulate the negotiations to put leverage in their favor. So, because of the way Iran typically negotiates, I suspect that they're going to draw out these negotiations. This is going to take time. This is not something that's going to de-escalate quickly. If this were another country, then you would expect that they would want to hurry up and come to a deal because, we're building up a military force on their border to attack them. And, most countries, it would scare the crap out of them and they would just make a deal really quick. So you would expect this to de-escalate quickly, but not Iran. Iran is not going to fold under pressure. And these negotiations are likely going to be drawn out. And we could realistically be going to war with Iran. It's very possible. There are tons and tons of these Ream Rude loads sitting on the load board. The LTL agency, like almost all of these loads are LTL agency. They've negotiated these new cheap prices. I don't know who the idiot is that's negotiating for them, but this was just idiotic for them to negotiate such low rates. Like they used to have some of the highest rates in the market, and they didn't negotiate contracts that were a little bit less. They're like 75 cents a mile less than what they were. They went from $2.75 a mile to like $2 a mile. So like their line haul rate used to be like $2.75 a mile. And then you had fuel surcharge on top of that and, stop pay and stuff like that. So like that load that I booked a couple weeks ago that canceled under the old rate, the total amount that load was paying was like $3.96 a mile. It was paying almost $4 a mile. And under the new rate, it was paying $2.75 a mile, I think is what it was, approximately $2.75 a mile. So it was like almost $1. It was right around $1.20 a mile less. Like that is a significant drop in the contract rate. Like that is huge. That is massive. Why would they negotiate such a cheap rate? I don't know. I don't have any idea. Like, do they just think that the bad freight market's just going to go on forever, or the freight market's just going to keep going down? So they just want to lock in a shitty rate before it gets shittier? No, that's not, like, the freight market is likely to turn around soon. I talked about this earlier with them getting rid of all of the foreign labor in the freight market. The freight market is likely to turn around soon. And they're locking in these cheap rates right when the market's about to take a U-turn. Like, do these people just not understand the freight market? Do they not understand what's going on? Like what the hell? But yeah, there's just tons of these ream rude loads sitting on the load board. They can't move them now under these new cheap ass rates. Like, these are multi-stop loads going to bad areas that are paying like mediocre rates. And now they can't move this crap. Let me see how long some of these loads have been sitting on the board. 1 hour and 2 minutes, 48 minutes, 44 minutes, 33 minutes, 39 minutes, 55, 42, 33. Okay, so almost all these loads have been on the board for less than an hour. So maybe they just slammed the board with tons of loads. 45, 38 minutes, 39 minutes. Yeah, they just slammed the board within the last hour with just tons and tons of loads. So maybe they'll be able to move them. Who knows? Oh, here's another load from Don Flores. Been sitting on the load board for 2 days. Terrell, Texas to Bensonville, Illinois. 277 a mile on the full rate. Again, all of the prices you see on here is the total, the full rate. It includes everything. It's fuel surcharge. I've had quite a few people ask me if the prices we see on here, if it includes fuel surcharge. It includes fuel surcharge, stop pay, unload pay, everything. It's all inclusive. It is everything. This rate includes everything. And you get a breakdown of that. You get 65% of the line haul, 100% of the fuel surcharge. You get various percentages of various different types of pay. But this number right here is the total amount, including everything. You get about 70% of whatever's on here. Yeah, I think that the LTL agency is going to have a lot of issues moving loads under this new contract if the rates go up like I think they're going to go up. If if they clean house with the foreign labor in the trucking industry, we're going to see a significant increase in rates. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, I need to wrap up this video. It's getting really long. We looked at a lot of loads on a load board. I didn't talk about many loads in, specifically because I was just scrolling through the board, not really looking at the loads, just letting you see the loads. So that's load board. That's what's going on. And we talked about a whole bunch of other stuff. I got a few days that I need to get the truck ready. I've already replaced the belt tensioner on the truck, and I did a whole bunch of other things on the truck. I spent an hour trying to get the bolt that broke off on the APU, trying to remove that bolt, and I wasn't able to remove it. I gave up after an hour because my drill bits, I broke 3 drill bits trying to drill that thing out. I'm guessing that the drill bits I have are just for wood. So I ordered new drill bits that are high-speed steel that are supposed to be sturdy enough to drill out bolts. And in the drill bit kit that I ordered, it also has those reverse screws for like removing bolts. So I need to go back out to the truck and work on the APU again and remove that bolt. So I've still got some prep things to do this week before I head back out over the road. I need to finish doing some bookkeeping stuff. I've got the majority of my bookkeeping done, but I still have to do, I still have to finish up on the bookkeeping. Um, Order, get groceries to take out over the road. Just a bunch of little basic things. Um, yeah, there's just a bunch of little things that I need to do to get prepped, to get back out ready to go out over the road over the next few days. Now, I need to get it done quickly in case I decide to leave early. I'm 90% certain that I'm going to be leaving Friday night. I'll probably leave the house at like 8 o'clock Friday night. And I'll probably roll up into Terrell, Texas at like midnight, 1 a.m., something like that. That's most likely what I'm going to do. And I need to flip my sleep schedule over to a night schedule. Right now, I'm on a daytime schedule where I'm waking up at like 7 o'clock in the morning. So I need to try to stay up all night tonight to flip my sleep schedule. But anyway, that's what's going on with me. Once I get back out over the road, we'll start making driving videos and all kinds of stuff. So have a good one. Bye.